sometimes all you need to recover from a slump is a 2-year break. I mean, it's what Ubisoft did with the Assassin's Creed series after Syndicate. For while the game was by no means bad, it didn't sell anywhere near as well as it should, due in part to players becoming fatigued with yearly Assassin's Creed releases. It's not hard to see why. The series in the long run hadn't really seen any major shake-ups in all its years of release. Yes, there had been additions and tweaks, but the formula had remained largely unchanged. Assassin's Creed needed something new and different to get players back in the animus, and the break provided Ubisoft with the answer. A complete overhaul of pretty much everything. The core mechanics like the climbing and the combat, the way in which the story was told, along with a full embrace of RPG-like mechanics. A fresh start in a brand new time period, the oldest in the series to date, with new characters as well as an entirely revamped present-day storyline. This was Assassin's Creed as we had never seen before, and before release, players were incredibly excited. But did we get the new and different Assassin's Creed game we all wanted, or was it just a slightly reheated dinner that we'd all eaten before? Join me today on Playing by Series as I play through the beginning of a new era for my favourite series, Assassin's Creed Origins. First things first, this game is simply awe-inspiring. Booting it up for the first time, I realised that my mouth had been hanging open throughout the first cutscene. It is, without a doubt, the best looking Assassin's Creed game. Ancient Egypt looked spectacular. The pyramids stretch into the sky, the sun peering out from behind shadowed spires, the sand reflects light shimmering in the desert heat, and the libraries of Alexandria gleam in the brightness of the Egyptian midday sun. You can tell that a lot of effort has gone into the visuals, and it was all totally worth it. It looks even better than expected in a way. Assassin's Creed has always looked incredible, pushing graphics as far as it possibly can, but here, it goes above and beyond the call of Assassin's Creed games of yore. There is a definite shift in art style as well. Characters look realistic, but with a unique tinge most definitely only attributable to late Assassin's Creed entries. These character models are expressive, beautifully crafted and exquisite to look at. Well, the main characters are anyway. The NPCs you find roaming the map don't look bad, but they lack the uniqueness of the main characters. But when you take the sheer scope of the game into account, this makes a lot of sense. This game is immense as it stretches from corner to corner of the Egyptian Empire, and makes the graphics that much more impressive. The draw distances are marvellous as you gauge from mountain tops over the desert, the pyramids looming in the distance. It brings forth inspiration from Dark Souls, one thinks, and if you can see it, you can go there. Also taking inspiration from Dark Souls is the refreshed combat system, and it is marvellous. It's a more strategic affair than ever, with the most choice that an Assassin's Creed game has ever offered. From long spears and twin daggers to a sword and shield, there is a great range of weapons on offer, and they each require a different playstyle to perfect. The Dark Souls influence comes with how the combat plays. If you're familiar with FromSoft's combat, you'll be right at home here. The bumpers attack or block with whatever weapon or shield is equipped in each hand, while a heavy strike comes from the triggers. It's a challenging system, and one that all but requires the use of your head. You can't just sit around and wait for an enemy attack, and dodging is all but necessary to ensure that you don't end up a bloody smudge in the sand. Enemy variety could be better, but it's still better than it has been in the past. There's more here than the standard brute, soldier and dagger bloke, with combatants also using different weapon types and even switching weapons mid-fight. After years of effectively the same combat system, it's nice to play an Assassin's Creed game with a refreshing take on fighting. Especially when you consider the boss battle that this game gives you. You'll be fighting everything from the brutish Phylakitai to stray war elephants on your journey around ancient Egypt, and each one feels different from the last. In order to triumph over these enemies, you're going to need to dive into the game's RPG features, of which there are many, because at this point, Assassin's Creed is an RPG. You level up upon quest completion and completing objectives around the map, and you gain ability points when you level. These ability points can then be spent on upgrades and skills, giving you the edge over your foes. I mean, this is a fairly generic RPG system in a way. There are 1,000,001 games with a system just like this one, but there is a reason that this is the case. It just kind of works. The ability tree is decently compact, but gives you enough options to hone your playstyle in the early game. The abilities are useful, even if you can only equip 3 at a time. Now, I think my issue lies with how your level is typed arbitrarily with exploring the map. There is a certain amount of freedom that comes with a massive map that you can explore, but when parts of that map are locked to you because you aren't a high enough level, it makes proceedings feel oddly stifled. It's a genuinely disappointing sight to open a map screen to find a massive map, only to discover that 80% of it is places you can't go because the game has decided that you're not strong enough. Then there's the enemies that the game puts in these places. The level before, your damage numbers are low enough that they're effectively coughing in their faces, but as soon as you gain the required level, you're able to fight them as you have all the enemies that came before them. It all just feels a little contrived to a degree. There isn't really much rhyme or reason to the map being separated in this manner, apart from the one the developers added in. You see, levelling takes a long time. Experience points you gain from fighting are negligible, and sometimes the extra missions barely give you enough to fill the bar. So you get the most from story missions, but some of these story missions are locked out by the same arbitrary level requirements as the map, so you can't do them without levelling up. It's very possible to level up by grinding through side quests and fighting enemy patrols, but it takes a long time. So Ubisoft created a fix for a problem that they invented: EXP boosters. For a small fee of your very real money, you can buy a booster that increases the not very real experience points you receive from the game. No, not a big lump of experience points, but a boost of the experience points you receive for normal play. Now, if you were lucky and you pre-ordered the game, it's likely you got one of these boosters in the bundle, but for the people that didn't, you'll have to pay Ubisoft for the privilege. Now, in their defence, it is, as I said before, completely possible to go through the game without one of these boosters, and you could say the reason why it takes so long to level is to make sure that people play through the side quests, but it all just strikes as a little greasy. On the topic of those side quests, however, I'd like for a moment to gush. They're numerous, covering the map in their little question marks, and they're all different. I've helped a drunk avoid being mistakenly married off to a bandit, a priest escape from a murderous guard captain, and talked a suicidal widow from the top of a cliff. They're all in-depth, unique and full of emotion, and at the centre of each is main character Bayek. Bayek is fantastic. He's funny, always up for a joke and laughing with his friends, but he also has a darkness within him that occasionally breaches the surface, giving a weight to the game's darker moments. He's the most human character the series has ever had, and perhaps the best element of the game in the long run. He is believable, and by the end you'll want to be friends with the affable Medjay. The story that Bayek is a part of is also excellent, as it recounts the birth of the Brotherhood through the relationship of Bayek and his wife Aya. It's a twisty-turny affair, but one that does subtext extremely well. At its core, it tells the story of a grieving father as he comes to terms with the death of his son and his perceived involvement therein. But draped over the top is the story of the assassins and their mission to rid Egypt of the Order of the Ancients, prehistory's version of the Templar Order. But that's not really focused on. This is Bayek's story, and Bayek's story alone. The present story is also back, to a degree. It follows the past scouring adventures of Layla Hussein, a young Animus engineer who really wants to get on Abstergo's Animus research program. But it's never really explained how she came across Bayek and Aya. We're just kind of expected to go with the flow. Unlike other present-day Assassin's Creed stories, however, there are at least stakes here. Layla's constantly looking over her shoulder, making sure that she's not being followed or discovered. It's not a bad story, and it definitely ends better than it begins, but it still feels like it's there because it has to be. On a slightly different note, mission variety is brilliant here. You could be nabbing a cart one moment or infiltrating an underground ancient stronghold the next, and most importantly, you'll never be stalking a conversation through city streets. Even the usually tiring addition of historical figures is wonderful here. It's not every day you get to meet Queen Cleopatra in Alexandria. The assassinations as well have been changed up, and it's great to see. Now you can approach some targets whenever you'd like, and they're within these strongholds that you need to infiltrate. Use your eagle Senu to scout out the area and find out where all the enemies are, and then use whatever method you feel fit to get to and eliminate your target. This is assassinations as they always should have been, and they feel somewhat like how they wanted them to feel at the birth of the series. But there is one problem to this much larger approach to the series. There's a lot of it. Like, a lot. I've said it before, but I'll say it again, this game is monumental. It's huge, almost too huge. The story is very long, and map is just insane in scale. But what do I mean by too big? Well, I take my map size and quality on a graph. I believe that fast travel and enjoyment of a map correlate. The more I fast travel, the more that the map is simply too big. Yes, it's pretty enough that when I don't want to think too much, I can just choose a destination and get my ride to auto-follow a path, but when I want to play the game, I use the fast travel constantly. And then there's the fact that they have to fill the map with things to do. I mean, nobody wants an empty map, that'd be boring. But equally, if you pack a massive map with too much, it soon becomes overwhelming. Not only are there side quests on the map, but there are treasures to find, encampments and bases to wipe out, spots to synchronise with, etc, etc. This is overwhelming. Assassin's Creed has had map clutter before, but it's largely been with boring things. Here though, all the activities are fun on their own, but the sheer amount of them puts you off. Perhaps then it's better to view these with different eyes. This is not a game to be played all the way through like others. You play through once, doing as many missions as you feel, and then move on. And when you replay it, you get a different experience than your last one, as you do different side quests. An odd way to approach replayability, but a valid one nonetheless. Assassin's Creed Origins gave the Assassin's Creed series the much needed shake-up it needed, introducing as much as it outright completely overhauled. It is an excellent game, with a fantastic story and a brilliant main character. The combat overhaul is excellently challenging, and the side quests are better than ever. Now, while it is definitely too big, it also encourages a different style of replay than we are perhaps used to. I think the only truly unforgivable sin is the introduction of the experience boosters, but even these can be completely ignored. This is definitely one to play if you didn't on release, and is a great introduction to the direction that Assassin's Creed has taken in more recent years. Just maybe don't get too involved if you're a completionist. There is an awful lot here. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Playing by Series. I've been Matt and you're on the Den. Get subscribed if you want to follow through to the end of this series, and leave us a comment and let us know how you felt about Assassin's Creed Origins when you played it. Stay tuned for a very special video on Thursday, and in the meantime, stay safe.